Okay, now the first question I can't answer because I wasn't.
You were young.
I was not alive before the war.
Okay. Yeah, you would have.
I can tell you about the tensions though, because after World War I, the Slavs had carte blanche as far as atrocities and crimes against our people. They were jealous of what we had because we worked and they didn't. And so we owned everything because we were there first, and they came in later. Just like in any city in the U.S., you got the people that have nothing that come into town and they want to be treated like they don't have to work. That's the situation we had there. And it was worse during the harvest time when these landless Slavs would show up and just go through the orchards or through the fields and steal and do whatever. They also committed major crimes, and then our people would go to the magistrate in the city and complain, file a report. Nothing ever happened to the perpetrators. And they kept saying, we're going to get you, we're going to get what's yours. That's something similar I hear in this country, and that's what happened actually. So, number 3.
Sure, yep.
When the partisans came in, I was too young to know what was going on. And the first camp we were in was Yarek, and I remember nothing because I was too young, didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And furthest back experience was in the third camp. The second camp was vague. First camp was Yarek, and they closed that, and they moved us to Kakova. And they closed the Yarek because they brought in all the homeless teenagers and preteens to make them communists. They weren't allowed to speak their language. They had to only speak Serbo-Croatian, and they tried to make them communists and lose all their national identity. So that's why that camp was cleared out. It was mainly just for them. Second camp was just to get rid of more of us, and as people died off, more were brought in from outside, from other camps that they had retaken, because quite a few people escaped and went back to their home, and then they were caught again and brought back. And we escaped from Krakova, and we were caught and brought back, and the third camp was Krushevo. It was smaller. It was a camp just for the hard cases, for people like us who knew how to abscond, I guess. And Grandma would sneak out at night. She was fluent in Hungarian, and she'd pick out the Hungarian farms around the camp, and they were always generous to us and gave us things. And then she'd sneak back in and get beat up sometimes for bringing stuff in. But she was able to get word out to our relatives in America, and they sent stuff to that Hungarian farm, and we got money and other things. And eventually we were able to bribe the head honcho to let us out, and he furnished a troop of guards that took us to the Hungarian border, which wasn't far away. And she gave him the money, and they didn't shoot us or anything, they just let us go. So coming to America, of course I was sick as a dog on the transatlantic voyage in an old troop transporter. It was called General Langford. And we happened to come through during Lent when it was the worst weather in the North Atlantic. We had 100-foot waves, and if the boat wasn't going up and down, which it was a lot of times, it would go up and then down, and it would go down so far the back end would lift up out of the water, and the propellers would boom, 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 like that. Everybody was just sick. I threw up 10 times in one day. I didn't get dehydrated because luckily I found where they kept the Coke machines. And you could get a Coke, but that's why I hate Coke nowadays, because I would drink it and then throw it up. So no Coke products for me at all. And on the voyage over, I think I only had one good meal. They had, when it calmed down, they had vegetable soup, which was kind of spicy. And I was only able to get one bowl. When I wanted more, there wasn't any more. But the boat didn't only go this way, it also went sideways. They had a movie going, and when the boat goes sideways, all the chairs would go wham, and then when it righted itself up, the chairs would go back. Same with the people had suitcases underneath the bunks. The bunks were military, where you had 2, 4, 6 in a row, like that. And whenever the boat leaned, all the suitcases would go wham, and then back the other way, wham. Put up with that for hours. So if you didn't have good baggage, then stuff would just open up and fly all over the place. My poor mom and sister, they separated the women. They were up front, they were up at the bow, and that was the worst, because that went up and down the most. We were kind of in the middle, so we had it a little better. And I don't know how much weight I lost, but I know I lost weight. So we got to New York Harbor. When we started out in Bremen, the SS United States, that was the flagship of the Atlantic at the time, the fastest ship. It was being loaded, or it just came in to be loaded, and we were leaving. It actually passed us somewhere in the mid-Atlantic, and it was empty and docked already when we got to New York. So our passage was eight days, and the U.S. SS United States made it in 5 or 6 days, I don't know which. So we got to the immigration, and first thing that really made me aware about the prejudice against anyone from Germany, they looked at all our stuff, and I was allowed to bring my accordion, and it said Hohner on the machine and made in Germany, and that bastard, he ripped off the made in Germany sign. That was the first negative thing I experienced when I got here. And the other thing I noticed was going down by train to Youngstown, telephone poles were crooked because they were made out of wood. The ones in Europe are made out of concrete. They don't have the wood to spare, and so they're all straight and in line. First, that's the first thing I noticed. And then when we got off the train, I noticed squashed chewing gum all over the sidewalks, which you don't have over there. That's what I noticed about American GIs. They were all chewing gum when we were over there. And actually, I'd never met a black GI. One came once to our swimming pool in town, the municipal swimming pool, and everybody stopped and looked at him because we'd never seen a black person. But it was nice to be settled in. Grandma met us at the train station with a friend who had a car, and quite a big car, and I was amazed at the size of it. And there was March, Ash Wednesday actually, is when we arrived. And she had turned down the local TV station. They were going to come and interview us and video us, and she said, no, don't need that. So we weren't on TV, which was okay. So we got to the house, her house, and I learned English by watching TV. I had a half a year English at the German gymnasium, they called it, which was equivalent to our high school. But they start earlier there. After third grade, you have to take a test. If you don't pass it, you don't get to go to high school. You get to go to trade school or technical school or whatever. So I passed it, and we had English and German the same year, and French. So I learned in 6 months. I learned quite a bit, and then I watched TV. Grandma kept us home for 2 weeks, so we would just watch TV and learn language. Then we got to go to Catholic elementary school. It was called St. Joseph's. And the funny thing was, they didn't test us or anything. They just stuck us, believe it or not. I couldn't even fit in the chairs. Put us in first grade. Me and my brother, one day. My sister was lagging behind. She stayed in first grade. But us, my brother and I, they put us in first, second day in second, third day in third, and so on, up the ladder. And then fifth, sixth, seventh. 8th grade, got in the math class. That was about the 8th day, I guess. And they were doing math, just the rote math, multiplication, subtraction. And they asked me to go solve a problem on the board, and I didn't work it out. I just put the answer from my head. And then this one kid was kind of jealous. He says, "What kind of math did you do?" So I put an algebra problem on the board, and they go, "Huh?" And they asked the nun, "Is that correct? Does x equal 5?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's it." So one nun had problems with square roots, so I had to go teach her class how to do square roots. So that was a bit of satisfaction. That's what kind of turned me on the path of being an educator, because I enjoyed teaching people math, I guess, or just anything. But my parents were not allowed to talk about our experience in the camps. They were told to keep their mouth shut and turn the other cheek. That's one reason you didn't hear about it, and it was never in the papers, and no books written, etc. Although now I gave you a bunch of books that have been written since. So it's about time it was publicized what happened. And I just recently found in one of my researches by James Bach, the one that wrote this one, what's it called? A Terrible Crimes and Mercies, yeah. He went to Moscow, looked into the criminal archives, and he found that the Poles ran a total of over 1,200 camps where they tried to kill off the German teens and preteens. They starved them, tortured them every day, got beatings, and that's totally hidden from all news or any publication, except he's the first one, French-Canadian, who researched it and actually was able to print it. So they are responsible for millions of dead in Poland alone, and we have not even a monument over here, nothing, because they told us to keep quiet. But I didn't promise that. That's why I keep giving lectures and talking about it. Okay, that's what it was like coming to America. I had to experience the high school life, which was all kind of strange, but it went by so fast. I just didn't realize all the things that were involved, not just school, but also social stuff, which they don't do over there. You don't have football teams, you don't have pep rallies. You've got sports, but they are outside of school. You have to join a club. We're here, all those different sports. Our exchange students think our high school here in town is a sports high school, and I said, no, it's not. It's voluntary. You want to join a team, you can join a team. And they recruited me for the St. Joseph Elementary track team, and I was the fastest runner in school because I played soccer over there, and I was in good shape. I could outrun. And then at the city tournament, I beat the black kids too in sprints. It was funny. I won the 100-yard dash, and they come running up to the black kid. What happened? What happened? Did you get hurt? Because I beat him. And then I went to the high school, and they tried to recruit me for football, but they didn't explain it to me. All I saw was a pile of bodies just piling on top of each other and trying to. I thought it was called fight ball because you fought over the ball, and that's not how it was. Just nobody explained it to me, so I didn't play. They wanted me to, but I didn't play. In fact, I went to the Hungarian parish down the street from where we lived, and the priest gave me shoes, and I played with the Hungarian soccer team. And they had won the state championship of all the ethnic clubs in the state, because all of them had just come over from the 56 revolution, and so they were all top fit, and they all knew how to play. That's why I ended up starting soccer in Kent here. They call me the father of soccer. I was the only one on the faculty that could play, and I recruited kids, and we had good teams. Okay, now, what do you want to know about the Donauschwaben?
Could you talk to me about the traditions that are still around versus the ones that may have faded away and stuff like that from the heritage?
Well, at the club we have Kirchweih, which was a holiday. Whenever the church was built, that was a date that was observed every year thereafter. It's called Blessing of the Church. That's Kirchweih, that's what that means. So it's celebrated every year, and we do it at the club. In fact, it's happening this Sunday. They have a mass and a procession around the lake, and then they choose two of the most, I don't know what you would call it, a boy and a girl, Kirchweih boy and Kirchweih girl, the two that have been the most exemplary personalities, I guess. Did you belong to the dance group?
Yeah, I'm in the youth group.
Oh,
so.
Okay. Well, you know about Kirchweih. Are you going to be in it this weekend then?
I mean, I'll be watching it. I won't be.
Oh, you're not in it? Okay.
I think so.
What level are you?
Youth group.
I mean, is that the teenagers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, my granddaughter Maddie was in it for a long time, and she's now with the adult group.
Yeah.
But as far as that goes, we celebrate Easter and Christmas like everybody else does. It was no different back home. And Christmas, though, St. Nicholas comes and gives a present. in this country, but they don't call him saint. They call him just Saint Nick. What do they call him here?
Santa Claus?
Yeah, take the church away from it and make him non-secular. Where in our tradition, it's the Christ child that brings the presents. And of course there was the tree, and then the Sternsingen, where the couple of kids would go around with dressed as the three wise men, and they have a star on one of the poles, and they go around to the different houses and sang songs, and then people would throw cookies and candy at them. Of course, we don't do that here anymore. I guess we have something similar called Halloween, where they get candy, but it has nothing to do with religion. It's mostly religion-based, our traditions. And here it's non-religious. I don't know, they concocted different things. So, the only one really I just remember is the Kirchweih, nothing else. Of course, the Easter Bunny, that came from Germany, Osterhase, where we hide the eggs and kids go around chase and find them. We had something similar there. So that was actually non-religious. That was just celebrating coming of spring, is what that was. And your number 6, I don't think people know about the Donauschwaben at all. Because like I gave you that publication, it's a moot subject, it's swept under the rug, nobody wants to hear about it. Well, you were the enemy. I said this was after the war. We weren't the enemy to start with. We didn't want any part of the war. In fact, our men, when the German army came in, our men went and hid. And then the army would round up all the family members and threaten to shoot them if the men didn't show up and volunteer into the army. That's what happened with my uncles. My dad was prisoner of war because he was recruited into the Yugoslav army when it was starting. So he was shipped to Augsburg to work in the Messerschmitt aircraft. Well, whenever I get a chance, I'd talk about it. But it's hard to reflect on because it was all bad stuff, and your mind tries to erase the bad things. I know I saw hundreds of bodies, but it's blotted out of my mind. I just remember eating when Grandma came in and stole stuff, and she brought it back to camp. And I begged my aunt 100 times for a piece of bread. That's in my book. I'm sure you read it. Mm-hmm. I remember those times, but not the bad times, no. I imagine that's how it is with every survivor. And I try to tell that to people I meet. At the root of it was the Austrian emperor. He was too liberal. He allowed all these ethnic groups to keep their own languages. German was the language that was used in everyday life, in publications and schools. And he let them keep their own languages. So he ruled an empire of 60 different ethnic languages. And then in turn, the Hungarians demanded that their heritage be recognized. And he didn't counter it. They demanded that all the German speakers under their borders, within their borders, had to turn into Hungarians, and they had to change their names, they had to speak Hungarian, etc. If you didn't do that, you couldn't vote, you couldn't own land, you weren't a citizen. So he let them do that. So 75% of the Hungarians are actually German descent. So if you go to any of our clubs, like you're at our club, there are people with Hungarian names, and they are translated directly from the other way around, I'm sorry. They have Hungarian names which can be translated back into German. And they're close-knit though. Germans, German Hungarians usually is the same, considered the same ethnic group. And they got a big chunk of their land taken, and it's part of Romania. Our people are spread out throughout the world. We're in Australia, South America. One place in South America is called, in Argentina, is called Entre Rios, between the rivers. And it's the same thing. They have the same, the villages have the same look, the same layout, everything. It's like they were transplanted from there to there. They're in Australia, and of course in the United States, every big city has a German club, or 2 or 3. So we keep connected with our heritage by exchanging dance groups, visiting each other, having a central publication for all of us.
Do you think the clubs are staying as strong as they used to be, or do you think that they're...
Well, it's not as ethnic as it used to be. It's more liberal now, and they're allowing so many non-German speakers to come in, and so everything's in English, which is par for the course. All the business transactions and the social events, it's all English now. Only the old-timers like me will go there and speak German and sing the songs, but the young people don't. I used to teach. I was the first German teacher they had back in '65, and I didn't want any money. I said, I'll do it for free. So we did it a couple of years, and then they dropped it for some reason. I don't know why. And then they started up again in the 90s, and it lasted a year. So they're not keeping up with the language. That's the one thing. That's the basis of the club, the language. And they should continue that more than anything. And it doesn't have to be the Donauschwaben theme, but it should be reflecting the German heritage, really. That's all. Anything else?
Is there anything else that you want to add?
I have mentioned it at a speech when we had German American Day. I did a speech on, and I said what unites us is the language, and we should keep it up. And then they taught it, they had it going for a while, and then they stopped it again. So I don't know. I think the language should be available, the learning of it should be available. I had kids from 5 years old up to high school in my classes, and I know 2 of them have PhDs in German now, and a couple of them are teachers, German teachers. So somehow I did have an influence on it, but not enough.